Hi, everyone. Welcome. Once again, thank you very much for making the time to be here this evening. Now, as usual with our webinars, I'm going to start and I'm going to talk about our topic this evening, and then we will have a Q&A or a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions that come up during the session, just make a note of it for yourself, and I will give you ample opportunity at the end, and hopefully I can answer all of those for you. Now, tonight, I want to start with a little reflection on not knowing. And I've adapted this from the work of the teacher and author Jack Cornfield from his book, The Wise Heart. So what I would like you to do is just sit back and relax. And maybe even close your eyes and take a deep breath in and out. And in and out. And in and out. And just keep on breathing like that. And I want you to relax and just sit quietly and easily, just focusing on your breath or on your body or on both. And when you feel settled, just bring to mind a time 10 years from now in the future. And recognize that you don't know what will happen then. And I want you to feel what it feels like to have the feeling of not knowing. And just relax with it. Relax. And think of the earth spinning through space with hundreds of thousands of people being born and dying every single day. Where does each life come from? How did it start? There are so many things we don't know. Feel the truth of the don't know mind. Relax and become comfortable with it. And I'm going to ask you to bring to mind a conflict. It may be an inner or an outer conflict. Just be aware of all the thoughts and the opinions that you have about how it should be, how they should be. And recognize for yourself that you don't really know. Maybe the right thing will lead to something worse. You don't know. Maybe the right thing will lead to something better. You don't know. Maybe the wrong thing will lead to something better. You don't know. Consider how it would be to approach yourself, this situation, the other people, with the don't know mind. Just feel it for a moment. Don't know. Not sure. No fixed opinion. Allow yourself to want to understand anew with fresh eyes, with beginner's mind, and approach it with the don't know mind, with openness. In this situation of conflict, how does the don't know mind affect the situation? Does it improve it? Does it make it wiser? or easier, more relaxed? I don't know. Practice the don't know mind until you are comfortable resting in uncertainty, until you can do your best, and until you can laugh and say with conviction, I don't know. And then just take in another deep breath and out and in and out, and then return to the here and now. Welcome. Now, in keeping with our theme tonight, I want to start with a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, who in his book, Beyond Good and Evil, said, "If you gaze long enough into the abyss will gaze back into you." Now, he makes this remark after he cautions the reader that those who fight monsters risk becoming monsters themselves. And the reality is that those who see nothing but monsters can't fail to develop an affinity with monsters. In the real world, we often see the political leaders focused on freedom who then become the oppressors. We see the religious leaders preaching salvation and then they collapse into their own indiscretions. Or we see the well-meaning business leaders preaching moderation and simplicity, and then they fall right back into the trappings of excess. Now, in my interpretation, this quote highlights the hazards in the life of the brave ones who embark on the heroic journey, the free ones who disregard existing values and create new values of their own. Nietzsche seemed to mean that if your highest value is truth and you pursue it at the expense of everything else, you risk encountering truths that cause you to question the value of truth. Now, this kind of truth can potentially drain you of energy and inhibit your will to power and meaning. Nietzsche also seemed to think that the strongest human beings are those whose sheer love of life is so powerful that they enthusiastically desire the eternal repetition of everything that has happened and will happen, whether those things are good, bad, or evil. It doesn't matter. Such a strong human being affirms life without judgment, absolutely. Only such a person can afford to know all the truth. And it may sound a little esoteric, but the question I have for you is, how do you know whether you are that kind of person? Or whether there are some truths about the human condition that, if you acknowledge them, would inhibit your love of life? The only way to find out is to stare deeply into the abyss of truth. Now, we are talking about an abyss, but what is it really? An abyss is something that is bottomless. There's no end to the search. The issue is where the bottom is for you. At some point, you may find that the abyss is staring back at you, and then you'll know that you've hit bottom. So what Nietzsche is saying could be interpreted as either know where your limits are and be cautious, or he might be asking, how strong are you? You will never know unless you search the abyss. Now, we all go through times that deeply challenge us, moments that rattle us to the core, that turns our day-to-day reality upside down and force us to redefine what really matters to us. And in a few minutes, we're going to go and explore what the abyss becomes for us in our journey of change. Okay. As this webinar is a continuation of an earlier conversation that we started many webinars ago, I would like to just take a few moments to set the context of the hero's journey as a metaphor for change and transformation. Again, we have a couple of new people on the group this evening, so hopefully this will give you enough context. Now, if we look at the graphic on the screen, there is the understanding that all journeys start within our desire to live out the purpose we want for our life. And knowing purpose is to understand the direction we pursue in this world we choose to inhabit. Our heroic journeys makes us inhabit the known world, which is life as usual. And on the screen, you will see that's the top half is the known world. This is the world where we exist on a day-to-day basis. This is where everything is familiar. This is where everything is known. This is almost what we can call the ordinary world. But when we choose to undertake a journey, it is possible to move from the known world to the unknown world. Okay? And a journey from the known world into the unknown world will often lead us into a tricky path of change and transformation. Now, all of these journeys starts with a very simple call to adventure. Now, a call to adventure shows up in your life as an event. It shows up in your life as an opportunity. And we always have the freedom to either accept or reject a call to adventure. If we reject the call to adventure, we will just continue life in the ordinary or in the known world. And life will just go on as usual. And it's possible that life might get marginally better or marginally worse. But for all intents and purposes, you are stuck in the known world. If you accept the call to adventure, that opens up opportunity. And this is where we then venture forward on an adventure of change in the unknown world. The unknown world is where everything is new, everything is dangerous and unpredictable. So when we decide to answer the call, we take the very first hesitant step to cross over the threshold and enter into the road of trials. And the road of trials is where we face and overcome the obstacles, the issues we experience, and of course, where we pursue the learnings that we need to grow. So the road of trials is basically about overcoming problems, removing obstacles, and learning all of the new skills and attitudes we need in order to become the being that we are setting out to be. Now, this is where we face and deal with our fears, with the dangers and the threats in the process of transformation and growth. And then we reach the abyss. And the abyss is the topic of this evening. Now, in some ways, the abyss is very much a mindset. It is a space in which you need to make a decision, and based on that decision, you would move forward or you would interrupt your journey. Okay. The abyss represents the greatest challenge in the hero's journey. In the abyss, the hero faces their greatest fear and they must face it alone. This is a very solitary obstacle that has to be overcome. The abyss represents the state that we started with this exercise this evening, that state of not knowing, that state of embracing uncertainty and being comfortable with the not knowing mind. Not knowing is actually the ultimate initiation that the hero on the journey of transformation have to overcome. Now, it's easy to see the abyss as something to be feared. It is very easy to fear the abyss as a place of loneliness, a place of great danger. Now, if I can tell you sort of a personal observation, on a personal level, I recognized in myself my true limitations on my road of trials, even before I got to the abyss. I was in a state where I was always holding out for wanting more. I wanted to read one more book. I wanted to learn one more skill. I wanted to go on one more course. And of course, hanging on to all of my own doubts of being worthy, of being good enough, I kept on postponing taking action and going into my own personal transformation. I kept on not doing what I set out to do. In the last webinar, you would have remembered that we talked about the road of trials. Even though it's one of the stages, it may sometimes become the biggest stage in the hero's journey, because we create so many obstacles for ourselves that we almost stop ourselves from moving forward. And a lot of that has to do with doubting yourself. The Jungian psychologist James Hollis wrote of this, and he said, doubt is unsettling to the ego. And those who are drawn to the ideologies that promise the dispelling of doubt by proffering certainties will never grow. In seeking certainty, they are courting the death of the soul, whose nature is forever churning possibility, forever seeking the larger, forever riding the melting edge of certainty's glacier. So what James Hollis says to us, he says that there is no growth in uncertainty. Growth requires uncertainty. It requires a willingness to be in that state of not knowing and stepping forward anyway. He also wrote a little more, and he said, acceptance of oneself is the essence of the moral problem and the acid test of one's whole outlook on life. That I feed the beggar, that I forgive an insult, that I love my enemy, all these are undoubtedly great virtues. But what if I should discover that the least among them all, the poorest of all beggars, the most impudent of all offenders, the very fiend himself, that these are within me, and that I myself stand in need of the arms of my own kindness, that I myself am the enemy who must be loved? What then? And what he means with that is that although we may be accepting and forgiving of others, the hardest task that we have is accepting ourselves as good enough, as worthy enough, that we need nothing more in order to go forward. So apart from struggles with self-acceptance, the abyss is also a fertile void. And in this fertile void, it is where great new potentials can take root and begin to grow. It is the space in which you, the hero, rising to the challenge in your life, can actually go and find your ultimate power. It is the space where you can realize your full potential and become true to yourself, becoming truly authentic. So the abyss is not only a place of challenge, it's also a place of great resource. It's where possibilities arise. This is where you choose to become the new being that you want to be, and where you make the decision to close the door to the old you that you used to be. And then as a new being, you open yourself up to the new, the unexpected, the unfamiliar, the unknowable moments. And you allow yourself to embrace the enormous opportunity to develop and embody the wisdom and the character of this new being that you are becoming. So the abyss presents us with the opportunity to develop increased depth, integrity, and character, or not. The choice is always ours. And the abyss is where we choose to accept our new self fully and without reservation. Now, in the abyss, all of the structures that used to be part of you also collapse. The old self dies, and the abyss makes space for the new self to be born. This is where fear dies to make way for courage. This is where ignorance dies and enlightenment grows from its remains. This is where dependency and irresponsibility die so that independence and power can grow. The old structures that had been defining and also confining us collapse. And like a demolished building, it makes space for something new. And that new thing will be a structure of our own choosing that is more in tune of who we have become and who we want to be. And that structure is the structure in which we accept then who we are going to be now. And it's also where we are going to be comfortable with not knowing. So ultimately, the abyss becomes the mirror in which we look for our new self until we see that reflection looking back at us or not. Now, surviving the abyss is simply this. It's about embracing and accepting your new self and then unreservedly letting go of the old you. A quick anecdote. During the course of his very long and distinguished career, the Irish poet W.B. Yeats often changed his themes, his style, and his personal philosophy. And sometimes he actually just left behind an audience that he cultivated. And when he was criticized for this confusing constancy of change, he actually replied in a poem, and he said the following. He said, "The friends that I have it," sorry, let me just read it properly. "The friends that have it, I do wrong. Whenever I remake a song, should know what issue is at stake. It is myself that I remake." And that's a beautiful little piece of poetry that just talks about that point where you actually abandon the old you and you just embrace the new you. And I'm going to read it again. "The friends that have it, I do wrong. Whenever I remake a song, should know what issue is at stake. It is myself that I remake." And this transformation is more important than any audience or community you had. It's about moving forward. It's about embracing who you want to become rather than clinging to what you used to be. Okay, let's go on. And I want to talk a little bit about the revelation, because something that is very much a part of the abyss is the revelation. And it sounds very ominous if I say it like that. But a revelation simply means the revealing of something, to reveal something that was hidden before. It's very simply like opening a curtain or a door, and then you see what's behind it. So I'm going to make you a promise tonight. If you commit to letting go of the old structures, I promise that we are free to see ourselves and our journey and the way that we live our life in a totally new way. Free of all of the old roles and defenses. And once we free ourselves of that, we can actually go and consider brand new possibilities for ourselves. At some point, as we float in this fertile void of possibility, we will experience a revelation, an insight into ourselves about who we can become. And that is the insight that will lead us out of the abyss and into our transformation. Earlier, I spoke about not knowing and being comfortable in that state of not knowing. But it's also about having the patience to remain in that state of not knowing up to the point where this revelation makes itself known, the insight that allows you to move forward into something brand new. Okay, I have another quick story for you about the Gurkhas. Now, the Gurkhas are soldiers from Nepal who actually up to this day are still an integral part of the British Army. Now, they are very famous for their resilience and their bravery in combat. And their motto says, "Better to die than be a coward." Now, this little story is a story that goes back to the Second World War. And in the Second World War, a Gurkha rifleman escaped from a Japanese prison in South Burma, and he walked 600 miles alone through the jungles to freedom. This journey took him 5 months, but he never asked the way and he never lost the way. Now, for one thing, he could not speak Burmese, and for another, he regarded all of the Burmese as traitors because they were aligned with the Japanese. He used a map, and when he reached India, he showed this map to the intelligence officers who wanted to know all about this odyssey. Marked in pencil on this map were all the turns that he had taken, all of the roads, all of the trail forks, all of the rivers that he crossed, all of the bridges he crossed. And that map really served this rifleman well. Unfortunately, the intelligence officers did not find it so useful because it was drawn in pencil on a street map of London. And in a way, this is what the abyss represents to each of us. It is a map that we explore as we walk it. And it is a map of revelation that charts our journey, which is really meaningful to us, but it's meaningless to others. Okay, to bring the formal part of tonight's session to a close, I just want to do a little meditation or a little exercise. It is a meditative exercise, so I'm going to give you all of the permission, and you're welcome to give yourself the permission to just sit back and relax, and just where you are, sit comfortably, just with your spine erect. Maybe close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And just feel the points of contact between your body and the chair or whatever you are sitting on. And notice the sensations associated with sitting. Feelings of pressure, warmth, maybe a little tingling, a little vibration, and everything else you feel. And just gradually become aware of the process of breathing. Just pay attention to wherever you feel the breath most clearly, either at the nostrils or in the rising and the falling of your chest. Just allow your attention to rest in the mere sensation of breathing. And just know there's no need to control your breath. Just let it come and go naturally. And remember how it feels not to know. Being comfortable with not knowing. And yet knowing that all you need to change is acceptance of who you are. You are worthy. You are ready. And as you are sitting there, maybe struggling with your own road of trials, your own obstacles, your own problems, or maybe you are looking into your own abyss. Just imagine being in a garden and create a picture in your own mind of the perfect garden for you. And even if you cannot see the garden in your mind's eye, just remember how it feels. Early in the morning, with the air against your skin, with the sun illuminating every flower in soft light, casting that early morning heat on your body. And then become aware of a wall somewhere in this garden, a high wall with no gate, with a footpath leading to it from where your feet begin to walk towards it. Taking care with your steps, one foot in front of the other. And when you reach this wall, now reach out and put your hands on the wall. Feel the roughness of the wall against the skin of your hands. And lean forward and rest your forehead against the wall. And realize that this wall is a barrier you made up in your mind that you can step through any time you want, simply by deciding you are good enough. Decide now and step through. And inside this enclosed area, see the steps rising up to a little hill, and climb these steps to the top. And on the top, you see a small wooden box. And you can see that there's some writing on the lid. And leaning over, you see the letters say, what you need to know to transform is inside. And in a moment, I will ask you to open the box and see what is inside, but not yet. I want you to consider what could be inside that will cause you to know you are worthy, you are ready. And after considering that for a moment, open the box. And inside you will see a piece of paper rolled up. And by unfurling and reading this piece of paper, you know the answer. You know the clue, the map that will show you what you need to do to let go of old structures and embrace the new. And breathe in that knowledge, in and out, and in and out, integrating your awareness of what you know inside. And then just come back to the here and now. Okay, welcome back. I'm gonna unmute you guys and let's take some questions, some observations or insights.
Sure. Thank you so far, Francois. That was amazing. I'm still coming back to the moment.
Oh.
I was there.
Oh.
I still feel okay. I'm still getting back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Richard, you have an observation?
It's quite interesting, Francois, because I read very interesting. It's relevant to what you spoke about being the best you in a moment ahead, and what are the obstacles that prevent you from being the best you. And it's all up to us just to be a little bit more disciplined, or a little bit more aware, and just, you know, I don't know, if not push yourself, but just strive to be the best you.
Yeah. Yeah. If we look at the abyss from a pragmatic point of view, because if we go back to the last webinar, we talked about the road of trials, and we talked about the road of trials is about overcoming your obstacles. And then in the beginning of this session, I said the abyss is largely a mindset shift, because when you enter into the abyss, you have essentially, through your growth, through the road of trials, become this new person that you want to be, that you want to grow into before you actually settle down in the transformation. And in the abyss is where you make the decision, I am enough. Everything that I've done up till now has prepared me, and I can now step fully into what I want to become. This does not mean you've got all the knowledge about being this new person. This does not mean you've got all the experience about being this new person. But it's that conscious decision that says, I have become this new person, and from here on in, I am leaving the old behaviors, the old habits, the old thought patterns behind, and I'm operating in the world based on this new paradigm that I've consciously entered into.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I think, I don't know if I should wait for you to respond to Richard, or can I just go ahead?
Richard, was there an answer in there that made sense to you?
Yes, Francois, I'm also willing to listen to what Annie has to say.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, because I actually want to use you as an example.
Oh my goodness. Look, I've experienced the old self dying really, 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 and I am experiencing the new self appearing.
Yes.
I still struggle with the don't know, you know, the limitations of the don't know. So I know that I must do more meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, am I right when I say that what I got out of it also is that I don't have to have the answers?
No, you don't. You don't have to have all the answers. You have to make the decision. Annie, can I use you as an example for a moment?
Yes, you may, sure.
Okay. Because for the rest of the group, Annie did something really brave in the last year. Apart from being a coach and apart from working in a lot of corporates, she decided towards the end of last year, she was going to become a Pilates instructor now. And she went through the training, which was her road of trials. She had to get all this new knowledge. She had to do assessments. And then there was a point where she had to decide, now I'm actually going to commit to being this instructor. And that was for her the abyss at that point in time. But then what she did was she put together, and she's actually moved on into the transformation, because she said, okay, now I'm going to do this with all the skills and knowledge I have. And she started instructing people. So she's already in the transformation. She crossed through that abyss by making that decision. She's going to do it right now. Yeah.
You're right, and it was quite abyss, because there were mornings that I got up knowing that I'm going to stand in front of people 30 years younger than I am and tell them about the mind-body connection and how wonderfully we are made, and that we can actually, you know, be so fit and fabulous as our minds can conceive. And I was just like driving to these studios and just know, okay, I don't know, but I know, as you say, you have some of the answers.
Yeah.
And then when you give yourself to that moment by moment, you discover the new you. It was absolutely amazing. After every 60 minutes of class of instructing, I would walk out and feel like I'm walking on water. Okay, then I come home and I watch another YouTube more advanced, and I think, oh no, there's another depth for me, you know.
Yeah.
So the depth of this whole journey for me is still part of my growing process, I think.
Yeah, you also remember that you and I had a conversation before you had your very first session, and at that point in time, and actually, I'm so glad you're on this webinar tonight, because at that moment, I remember in our conversation, you were in that point where you had the fear of not knowing how that was going to go, not knowing
Absolutely, yes.
whether you should go ahead with it, but then you had the mental fortitude, and on a mindset level, you decided this is what you are going to do, and you went ahead with it. Yeah.
No, exactly that. I remember what I told you. I don't know if I should go on. You know, it's just literally this picture you had on the screen of the guy standing on the top of that rock.
Yeah.
I was there, and I know Louis listening. He's here. He's like just a shadow here in the room, and he's the only one who knows about it. But I thought even of just dying, rather dying. You know, so it was no sure.
Yeah.
And then when you read that part of that story of better to die than to be a coward.
Yes.
I know what that feels like, because I wanted to I said to Louis, I'm getting all my papers ready and he must tell this to the children. It was, I laugh now, but it was very serious.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. It's a very serious feeling. It feels like, okay, I've done everything I need to do in this world and I've got a legacy, but now if I die now, what do I really leave? What memory do I leave people with? So that was how serious it was.
Yeah. Thabo, welcome.
Hello, guys.
Yeah. Hi, hello, Thabo. I haven't met you. You were not in Francois' classes, were you? No.
No.
Okay.
Thabo joined us from the last webinar.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Any observations from your side, Thabo?
Yeah, this was a really great session. Lots of insights, and I think lots of insights that are helpful in terms of even my own personal journey. But one thing that really, sort of struck me was the self-acceptance piece, or the role of self-acceptance in terms of what I think of it as a survival mechanism during I'll call it the journey, right? The Odyssey, whatever the journeys are. And so I think that, regardless of where you are in the journey, because there's always uncertainty, once you decide to take that first step, you're going to be met with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of doubt and not knowing. And your demons come up. And I think that self-acceptance is just so critical, because I've, felt at different points in my journey where there's, a huge amount of anxiety because you don't know, you're uncertain, you don't understand the landscape. And so you're trying to figure things out. And oftentimes you look externally, right?
Yeah.
So for example, if you're a teacher or you're a speaker, you may look externally to your audience to provide you with the approval, right? To provide you with the necessary, sort of validation for what you're doing. So you're almost looking externally in that sense. And I found myself a lot of times doing so. And when you do that, you almost give away the power, right? You give away your you give away the power, and so I think that's what causes a lot of the anxiety, because you're looking for approval, and if you're not receiving it, then you start to think, okay, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Yeah. And so the whole self-acceptance, and it's self-acceptance, it's forgiveness, it's self-love.
That's right.
Regardless of where you are, it is so critical, because you need to be able to say to yourself, I will give myself, I will accept myself regardless of what the situation is. And the acceptance I have for myself, or the love I have for myself, is greater than the love anybody else can give me, you know, that I can receive anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I think that helps to create a mindset where you don't look externally, you look only to yourself, you know, for validation, for approval, and you know that you're always enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's that feeling that you're not enough that, you know, drives you to feeling this, you know, this anxiety and this, you know, this feeling of like desperation at times because of the uncertainty that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. That was wonderfully put. Thank you very much, Thabo. What makes and I agree with you, the uncertainty is with you all the time. But what makes the abyss unique is the abyss is that point. I mean, with the road of trials, you are learning new skills, you are removing obstacles. So there's failure that can occur there. There's the uncertainty in learning new things. But if you abandon your journey there, then you can still just step back into the known world or the ordinary world. What makes the abyss unique is when you get to the abyss, it's about abandoning everything that you are. So it's almost like you're closing the door to whatever is known, and you are now making the conscious decision to step into everything that's unknown. So I think in terms of the continuum of uncertainty, this is getting to great uncertainty because you are basically abandoning everything that is known. And you are stepping and being this new role, this new person, this new being that you want to be. And you are committing that from this day onwards, all that I'm doing is the new. I'm not relying on the old anymore. And that is a very demanding decision to make. It's a very difficult decision to make. So that's why I'm saying the abyss is very much about the fear of loss on the one hand, and then also the excitement of embracing the new, but also the stakes of failure just goes up significantly.
Sure. Can I come in here?
Absolutely.
What I've experienced, and I just want to know if I'm on track here, is the new me, the really strong, different self-worth person, loving myself, and feeling the integrity and the intensity of the new me does make you feel quite alone, because your friends, if I can call them, or colleagues or people who knew you, kind of don't like the new you. You know, you are in a way to them. I've had situations this past week where I thought to myself, must I play myself a little bit down, you know, so that they can accept me. So that for me is still part of the struggle, that the new me is not necessarily liked by other people in my career, because they want you to be sometimes insecure. They want you to make mistakes here. Not that I say I'm perfect, but you know what I mean by being confident in the new me. So it can be quite a lonely path.
Yeah. The interesting thing here is, Anya, and I spoke about it on the last webinar a little bit, but also about letting go of the old sometimes means that you have to let go of people.
Yeah, that's actually, you say it in better words, because I just had to.
Yeah, because, you know, sometimes people will drag you back into the old world. And the interesting thing about that is, even though you may go back because you have some affiliation or some loyalty to them, you will actually grow to resent them, because what they are doing is they're taking away everything that is meaningful to you.
And especially when one is so super, I know I'm a free spirit. I know I sense energy, and I pick it up and I give. And I often have to just say to myself, I will not accept this comment that's just been said. But I don't say it loud. I just, in myself, that inner being, okay, this is not true. This is not true. Because they will often say things that you know that you've overcome, that they say, but that can't be, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you say, pulling you back.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bev, I've been seeing your microphone flickering there. Does that mean you want to join in with us?
Speak to us, Bev.
Yes. Well, I've got so much going on in my head. I'm a great fan. I don't know if any of you are familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien's work, the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And tonight's and I've read the trilogy several times. I've watched all Peter Jackson's movies several times. I've had nightmares over it because it was so real. And the picture I had tonight, for those of you who know the story, is when the Fellowship of the Ring, the 8 people go through the Iron Mountain. They're led by Gandalf the Grey, the wizard.
Yes.
And they cannot go back because the door has been shut, and behind them is like this evil creature ready to consume them. So they go through the Iron Mountain where dwarves used to mine and what have you, and they nearly, all sorts of things happen to them, but they nearly through to the other side when the worst demon possible,
the Balrog.
Comes the Balrog,
Yeah.
comes and out of this fire and just ready to consume them. And Gandalf is left to fight this thing, and the rest of the friends run away. Well, they have to. He sort of tells them to carry on, and you know, he literally falls into the abyss with this Balrog, fighting this demon. And the fellowship, the other 7 have to carry on without him, and he has to release them. And as the story goes on, it's eventually he reappears to them in the next part of the story, way down the line, but he's transformed.
That's right.
He's not Gandalf the Grey anymore, he's Gandalf the White. But there's so many analogies in that story with what's being discussed here. And I think for me, the abyss is a fearful place because that's where the demons reside, and that's where you have to have the courage to fight them. And as you said, Annie, let go of your friends because they're not going to even help you. Francois, you said this is a lonely place to be. Gandalf was there all by himself fighting this terrible, frightening creature. And he had to obviously dig very deep to be able to and use every skill that he had possibly learned. And he was older than all of us put together in this story, I think. So he had lots of skills. He'd learned. He was the oldest of the fellowship, but so he had to put all these skills together to fight this thing and come out renewed. And it's it's just the analogy is the absolute fear. When we did that exercise, Francois, and you said this wall and put your head against this wall, and I just saw this huge wall, this, you know, that, and I thought, how am I going to get over this wall? You know, I shared last time we're in the process of moving to a brand new place, 1,100 kilometers from where I have lived all my life.
Sure.
For 58 years, I have lived in Johannesburg, and we're moving to the seaside, which sounds absolutely wonderful to everyone. But it's like, this is the part of the journey where the fear comes in. What has helped enormously, and I thank you for that, Francois, is there's a couple of things. The state of I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I'm going to do there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make a life there, make a living there. I don't know. And I've just got to be okay with that. And it's quite so that's a demon for me, is the control and the total taking away of the control. And I think it was Trabo that said something about, Trabo, you also said some amazing things this evening about self-acceptance, and you are good enough and what have you. It's
The self-worth.
yeah, the self-worth that, you know, no, you take all that you are on the journey with you, but you are transformed. And I know, you know, I remember now. Sorry, there was one other thing that I really found helpful that you said, Francois, is the structures. The old structures have got to go. And if you remember back to the story in the abyss with Gandalf and the Balrog, literally the ground under his feet fell. The structures of the old mine that they were going up paths and chain ladders and all sorts of things, and literally that whole lot fell apart. That's why he fell into the abyss. Yeah. Because there was no foothold anymore. He couldn't hang on to anything. His friends weren't there. Nothing was there. And it's actually, although it's terrifying, for me, the structures of having worked in corporate for so many years, those have all had to go for me to turn into a new me. That's so right. That was also very helpful. I know I've taken up time telling this dramatic story, but
we've got time.
but yeah, it's so all of this and the metaphors that we've used this evening have been extremely helpful. And yeah, I think I can go through this abyss. Yeah. I don't think I actually have to fight something as big as a Balrog. Sometimes I also think we're in danger of making our demons too big. And sorry, Annie, I hear you. Your demon was huge. that obviously was massive. So I'm not downplaying that, because
no, I understand.
To go to the point where you were of, you know, actually, you said you saw yourself on the edge of that mountain, like
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm a very sort of, I can be a drama queen of note and make movies. I could be the next Peter Jackson myself, the movies I make in my head. but I think that the key thing is that sometimes those demons aren't as big as we make them out to be. And I think that's where I'm at, is that the structures have collapsed, and that's fine. I've got to rely on all that I've learned, and that's fine. I've got to get to the place of I don't know, and I'm comfortable with that. And the demons I can tackle. The demons, as they arise, I can tackle them, no matter how big or small they are. I am enough for that. So thank you.
An interesting analogy that came up for me when I was developing this work, and it's related to the quote from Nietzsche, if you stare into the abyss, sooner or later the abyss will stare back into you. But what was interesting for me, the metaphor there, is it's almost like you stare into the abyss because you're trying to find something that you can recognize. And ultimately, the abyss will look back, and hopefully what is looking back is the reflection of who you are that you want to see, which is this new being that you want to be moving forward.
Rather than a demon.
Yes. And sometimes, you know, if you stay in the abyss so long and it stays dark, and it goes back to what Tabo said, it's about that self-acceptance. If you can't get to that, you are never going to see something in the abyss that makes sense to you.
Yes. Yeah, I know this was an amazing exercise. Thank you. Thank you, Francois, as always.
I can't take full credit for it. This exercise is a variation of an exercise that I did with one of my favorite teachers, Win Wenger. He created this exercise. He calls it over the wall, and he uses it for problem solving. And I've just adapted a little bit for what we were going to do tonight. But if there's anyone's work that I can recommend, if you can put your hands on any books, or even if you go to his website, Win Wenger is an amazing human being.
Yeah, met him.
Can
Oh,
I,
this is
can I
amazing.
add something about just about the piece around not knowing, and the role of, I'll call it God or the universe. I'm not religious, but I do believe in some universal power, influences that influences everything. But I think that there comes a time when you realize that you don't know, and you have to accept that you don't have control of the outcome.
Yeah.
That all you can put forward is your intent.
Yes.
And you can put that forward into the world. You can put your intent forward, but the outcome is not something that you can determine.
Yeah.
And that's where that whole like serenity prayer sort of resonates with me, which is to understand the things that you can control and the things that you cannot. Separate those things that you cannot control. And there's you almost have to be able to just say, I know that everything is going to be okay, because I know that God or the universe is there.
Yeah.
I know that God or the universe is there, and that through my intent, there's a whole law of attraction thing. Through my intent, they will understand where I want to be, where I need to be, and they will guide me there. They will find a way to get me there. I will do my part, and they will do their part, and I will get there. And it will be an amazing place, not one that I may have, imagined, not the one that I may have imagined in my head necessarily. It will be an amazing place, and I will know that I could only have gotten there through this, the help of this, this universal power, in a sense. It feels like, one needs to be able to, I guess, give up control.
Yes.
And myself being someone that's very much, I'm very much about planning and, being clear about what steps are going to be taken to achieve which outcomes. But there does come a time where it feels like one has to be able to give up control and believe in something bigger. And believe things are going to be okay, even though you're not necessarily in control.
Tabo, I've got two responses for you. The one is a little story, and the other one is more supportive of what you said. But I'll start with the first one, which is a little story. And it's a story that Jack Cornfield, I've got an audiobook that I was listening to this week, where he was teaching on creativity. And he was telling the story about, about a proper example of beginner's mind. And he said, with proper beginner's mind, what's the very first thing that you do when you bake apple pie? And the answer to that is the very first thing that you do from beginner's mind, if you want to bake an apple pie, is to create the universe. Because with beginner's mind, nothing exists. So that's the little story. And the second response I've got for you is that the reason why we've got 5 people on the call tonight and not 500 is because the topic that we are talking about is transformation. It's not 5 minutes or 5 ways to become a better human being. It is about transformation, and transformation is something that is difficult. And most people out there don't understand that true transformation is a deep spiritual quest. Even if you're not a religious person, it's a spiritual quest, because you have a deep-seated belief that your life should serve some higher purpose, and that the transformational change that you are effecting in your life serves that higher purpose. And that higher purpose has got nothing to do with religion. Yeah. And this is why when we start talking about transformational change, this is why a lot of people will sort of delve back and they will be reminded of spiritual journeys in their past. And that is a good way of actually approaching transformational change, because in many religious traditions, the transformation is a big religious event. Just like a true transformation on a personal development level is a big event at that point when it occurs. I mean, I know, Tabo, you started your own business, and the last time you talked to us about the agonizing that you went through before you eventually did this. And this has changed your life significantly, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can never ever go back to the person that you used to be when you were working in the corporate environment to the person that you are now. And you might not agree with me at this moment, but in the next few months, in the next few years, you will find yourself, if you ever land in the situation that you were in before you started your business, you would say, I don't belong here. Those structures don't serve me anymore.
Sure.
It's akin to, we were talking about movies earlier on.
Yes.
The point in The Matrix when I think Neo or someone is offered the blue pill or the red pill.
Yes.
And you have to choose to, you have to choose to stay in the Matrix, or you have to choose to exit. And once you've taken the blue pill, you can never go back. You can never see the world as it was.
Yeah, that was the call to adventure. The call to adventure was him asking the question, do you want to take the red or the blue? Do you want to stay who you are, or do you want to see reality? Yes, that's the call to adventure. And when he accepted it, that put him in the road of trials, where he had to go through his training. And then there was a point where he doubted himself. And then they went and they rescued the guy that was caught, and the whole sort of war started. So he crossed the abyss, and then he became, and his true transformation ended at that point where he almost died. And then he just discovered that he could actually control this universe that he belongs to. So that's a brilliant analogy for the hero's journey that we're talking about over webinars. Yeah. If you want to see a beautiful movie that really illustrates the hero's journey very, very well, it's a baseball movie, Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah. I remember.
Yeah. If you see the Field of Dreams, that's a beautiful movie that illustrates everything that we're talking about in all of these webinars. Yeah. So, but look, a lot of the based on the work of Joseph Campbell on the hero's journey, there was a script writer in Hollywood, Christopher Vogler, who actually went and he developed a writing workshop based on the hero's journey. And a lot of the movies are developed according to the storyline of the hero's journey. And the reason why it's such an irresistible theme for us is because we recognize this journey in our own lives. And not only for the big transformational changes, even for the smaller changes, there's these cycles, and these cycles follow the hero's journey. I mean, you think about the simple act of choosing a mate and getting married. The moment that you are married, your world changes. The old world passes away and you are in this new world, and your life changes irrevocably. The day that your child is born, your life changes right there and then. So, if you look at life and the experiences that we have, the metaphor of the hero journey actually fits it very well, which is why we can actually use it to predict and anticipate the cycle in which our own transformations will play out going forward, because it fits this form. As ending off in terms of this evening, what's next? The next webinar would be about the topic of embracing transformation. and we'll have that on the 26th of June at
Okay.
7 o'clock again. I will send out invitations to anyone that is on the NLP groups or are on the mailing list for Break the Threshold, or are connected with Facebook, or is on the Break the Threshold newsletter. Well, if you anywhere there, you will know about it. Just in case, for some of the people that have joined us in recent webinars, the previous webinars are archived on breakthethreshold.com, and there's probably by this stage probably about 15 to 20 hours worth of recordings you can go and listen to if you wanted to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just dealing with
Definitely
the
do that.
yeah, this is the stages that we've already spoken about in the past webinars. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say thank you very much for showing up tonight. If anyone wants to continue the conversation a few more minutes, I don't mind. I'm booked for at least another 20 minutes to sit here and have a chat. So you're very welcome if there's more questions. But officially, we are done, and thank you very much for showing up tonight.
It
Thanks
was
so
nice
much,
talking to
Francois.
everybody. Thank
Yes.
you. Wow.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.